What are these strange stone structures? What are these strange stone structures hidden among the mountains of Iran? At first glance, they almost look like enormous natural boulders, but then you notice something that nature rarely creates. There are openings cut directly into the stone. Some are large enough for a person to enter. Others appear higher up, almost as if different levels were built into the same massive block. And suddenly the question becomes much more interesting. Why would anyone carve rooms into a giant piece of rock? Who made them? How old are they? And perhaps most importantly, what were they actually used for? Across the mountainous regions of western and southwestern Iran, unusual stone structures can be found among dry valleys, rocky slopes, and ancient settlements. Some appear almost completely integrated into the landscape. From a distance, they can be mistaken for ordinary geological formations. But up close, the surfaces tell a different story. The openings are not simply cracks, they form deliberate entrances and chambers, and in some cases, the stone seems to have been shaped specifically to create a protected interior space. So we have a strange combination: massive, natural-looking rocks containing clearly human-made spaces. But why? Could these have been shelters, storage chambers, places where people temporarily lived? Or were they connected to something much more important, something involving the dead? There is another clue. These structures are associated with regions where ancient Iranian religious traditions survived for centuries. Long before Islam became dominant in Iran, Zoroastrianism played an enormous role in the cultural and religious history of the region. And Zoroastrian beliefs included very specific ideas about death and the treatment of human remains. The body of a dead person was considered ritually impure. But that raises another question. If these structures were connected with the dead, why put them inside enormous stone formations? And why do some of them look almost like miniature buildings carved directly from the mountain? The answer becomes even more fascinating when we look at the local terminology. One term associated with these ancient stone burial structures is Bard Guri. The name itself is revealing. Bard is associated with stone, while Guri refers to a grave or burial. In other words, a stone grave. But this is where the story gets more complicated, because these were not necessarily ordinary graves in the modern sense. They belong to an ancient funerary tradition in which the treatment of the body was governed by religious beliefs about purity, earth, and death. And this tradition was especially significant among ancient Iranian peoples. So imagine the landscape roughly 1,500 years ago. There are no modern roads, no concrete buildings, no machinery capable of cutting through mountains in minutes, only people, stone, metal tools, and generations of accumulated knowledge. Somewhere in these dry mountain valleys, a community creates a stone structure. It isn't designed to be beautiful. It isn't necessarily meant to impress visitors. It has a purpose, a religious purpose, a purpose connected to one of the most important moments in human life, death. But here's where the mystery returns. If these structures were connected to ancient funerary practices, why are they so massive? Why construct them in such unusual forms? Why carve openings into enormous blocks of stone? And how much of what we see today is actually the original structure? Weather, erosion, and centuries of abandonment have changed these places dramatically. Some may have originally contained elements that have completely disappeared. Others may have been modified or reused by later communities. And that means the stones we see today are only fragments of a much larger story. There is also an important historical connection. Stone burial monuments and similar structures are found across parts of southwestern and western Iran, including areas associated with ancient Iranian and later Sasanian-era cultural traditions. The Sasanian Empire existed from the 3rd to the 7th century AD and was one of the most important Persian powers of antiquity. Zoroastrianism was deeply connected with the Sasanian state and society. So when archaeologists encounter unusual stone funerary structures in this broader cultural landscape, they are not looking at random piles of rock. They are looking at evidence of how ancient communities understood death, purity, and the journey of the dead. And now we can finally answer the question we started with. What are these strange objects? They are not giant houses built by mysterious people. They are not evidence of a lost civilization of giants, and despite their strange appearance, they are not simply natural formations. At least in the cases identified as Bardguri, these structures are ancient stone funerary monuments associated with Iranian burial traditions, and in particular the cultural world influenced by Zoroastrianism. Their unusual appearance is actually part of what makes them so fascinating. They blur the line between landscape and architecture. A massive piece of stone becomes a chamber, a natural mountain becomes part of a funerary monument, and something that initially looks like an ordinary boulder turns out to preserve a fragment of an ancient belief system. But perhaps the most haunting part isn't how they were built, it's why they were built. Thousands of years ago, people stood in these same mountains and faced the same question we still face today: what happens to us after death? Their answer was written not in books, but in stone. And those strange openings in the mountains may be some of the few remaining traces of that forgotten world. So the next time you see a strange rock in the mountains of Iran, look closer. Because sometimes, what looks like a natural stone is actually a doorway into history.